So thank you very much for our wonderful three panelists to join us today for the power of the tech transfer to spark innovation in the emerging markets. So firstly, my name is Jane. I'm the moderator for today. I'm coming from the organization called Venture Cup China, currently located in Shanghai for time being. So firstly, I would like to introduce the panelists briefly, and then I will give each of the panelists a few minutes to introduce themselves as well as to share their opinion in the relevant topics. Okay. So first, I would like to introduce Dominic, who is the Principal Investment and Specialist in the Asian Development Bank. And the next is Saraansh, the Head of New Business Development from CLP. And the last, we have Fernando, the Manager of Innovation Hub in Europe. So firstly, let's give you guys a warm applause and thank you for your time and being our guest for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So firstly, I would like to invite Dominic to do the self-introduction as well as a share of your opinion on today's topic. Please.
Yes. Thank you, Jane. So I'm Dominic. I work for the Asian Development Bank. I'm the Principal Investment Specialist for the venture arm of ADB that was just launched, set up this year. And our focus is on supporting and investing in early stage technology companies that solve big problems in emerging Asian markets. We do that through equity investments, but we also look to leverage ADB's expansive operational networks through the region. So ADB's been around for decades in the region. We work a lot with renewable energy project developers, municipalities, financiers, and a lot of these traditional clients are increasingly looking to us not just for financing, but also technology solutions. So we're well positioned to aggregate and see the big picture view on what is some of industry demand. And we're now trying to support entrepreneurs that have the right types of solutions to come in and solve some of these problems.
Thank you very much. So it looks like you have a very big branch name, but ultimately you are also serving and helping the little ones as well. That's something really good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. We try.
Yeah. Thank you. And then I would like to bring Siraj to do your self-introduction as well as your opinion for what you do here.
Hi everyone, I'm Saraansh. As Jane mentioned, I look after new business development at CLP, and I sit within our innovation group function. Just a quick recap on who CLP is. We're an Asia Pacific utility based out of Hong Kong, which is where I'm located. And in Hong Kong, we operate a vertically integrated utility business. And we also have operations in China, India, Australia, and a few countries in Southeast Asia. And primarily, we're an energy producer. In India and China, we have large renewable developments. In Australia, we operate under the brand name of Energy Australia, which is a retail company as well as a Genco. My role in CLP is, I would say, probably similar to Dominic and what Fernando will say as well, which is trying to understand how utilities can keep innovating to sort of meet the needs of the energy transition and ultimately meeting our sustainability targets and ambitions, which everyone's all sort of corporates are signing up to. So one of the things we do is we work quite closely with small stage companies, incubators, accelerator programs, local ecosystems, as well as international ecosystems to kind of find and develop the best solutions and technologies out there to solve our problems. Another focus for me personally, but because we're in CLP and we're an operating business, is actually how do we commercialize some of the technology? How do we integrate it into our businesses? Or how do we set up new business lines to actually capitalize on all the emerging energy trends that are growing? So I think from my perspective, the interesting kind of angle on this is how corporates actually accelerate tech transfer, particularly corporates like ourselves based in Asia Pacific. We work with companies in Israel, Silicon Valley, other parts of Europe, and we bring them over to Asia. And there's obviously that tech translation that we have to go through. But we also work with companies in Hong Kong and China, and we try and take them outside those regions as well. So that's kind of the role I see ourselves playing as part of this tech transfer conversation. Thank you.
I see. Thank you very much. I used to live in Hong Kong, so CLP is a very familiar name. It's definitely a huge company as well. So you guys must do something there to accelerate the energy transaction, at least in Hong Kong or the Asia area, for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your introduction. Thank you. And then we have Fernando. Could you please also do your self-introduction and a bit of the background and your perspective on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Jen, and thanks a lot for the invitation. So Enel is an Italian vertically integrated utility. We're a multinational present in more than 30 countries and reaching about 70 million customers all over the world. Having our customer base mostly in Europe and Latin America, though we have very large renewable energy projects also in other regions such as North America and Australia. So in Enel, we are committed to energy transition, for which we have an open innovation approach. We have defined open innovability, as we strongly believe that sustainability is the goal while innovation is the tool. So that's why we have put together the words and came with this new name that in fact is the name of our innovation and sustainability area in the group. For doing this, we have a completely decentralized innovation structure. So innovation is pervasive to all divisions and all countries of the group. And in this way, we can work on identifying the needs of the business itself, apply solutions provided by different players, and then take advantage of the best practices and solutions we run in different countries to export them and to scale them up into other regions. So we encourage the cross-fertilization of challenges, identification, and solution development within the group. Regarding what we do with other players, we work with universities, research centers, with major vendors, but in the last years, the startups are playing a more relevant role in our innovation model. So we have set up a network of 10 innovation hubs around the world. We are present with hubs in Israel, in Russia, in Italy, in Europe, in Brazil, in Chile, in Boston, and in Silicon Valley. So we cover the two coasts in the United States. I'm in charge of the Innovation Hub Europe. And basically what we do is develop the relationship with the local entrepreneurial ecosystem. So with those ecosystems that are more relevant for us. And most importantly, we scout solutions developed by startups and SMEs that could be implemented by the business line so that they can solve the innovation challenges. In the past 4 or 5 years, we have worked with more than 300 startups in the group.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, it is really amazing to see that the 3 panelists we have here actually coming from very different backgrounds, public sectors, utility companies, as well as the innovation hub of another utility company based in Europe. So I think we do have the consensus. At the moment, we are facing so many different challenges, but the most severe one that we have to face is environmental. That is closely related to energy, especially energy transition. So, but in the meanwhile, energy is a very highly regulated industry, nearly everywhere. So how do you guys see in your own capacity, what is the function could you do to contribute the SMEs actually overcome some of the regulatory barrier, be better integrated into the energy transaction system?
Sorry for this question for, should I go first?
Oh,
sorry.
Yes, it's actually for all. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Dominic. Yeah.
I guess we try to look at it from, as we're on the investments side, we try to look at it from the journey of the entrepreneur, the innovator that's looking to expand into these markets that we work in Asia. And you know, typically for a lot of the technology solutions that also solve some of these big environmental problems, not all, but you know, there are software solutions, but also many of these solutions have underlying deep science and also often have hardware as well. And And the existing venture funding to these traditional VC funding tends to highly concentrate in solutions that are maybe more on the software side, because you can scale more rapidly and generate the returns you want. So for us, we feel that probably if you look at the journey of the entrepreneur, you might need to be more patient in some instances, and there might be a need for a bit more patient capital. But there's also some very difficult points and hurdles in which these entrepreneurs need to overcome. And the first point, of course, is during the R&D, research development phase, where there's still a lot of uncertainty, and there's often a lot of support needed from public sector through universities, labs. But then even when you've got your product and you're going to market, in Asia in particular, aside from China and perhaps India, a lot of the markets are quite relatively small. They're fragmented, and each market has a different regulatory environment, different culture, different language, structure. So when you go in those markets, it can also be technically quite challenging. You got to break into the incumbents. They may find your first client to test your business model. If you're B2B or B2G, the customer acquisition cycle can be quite long, quite complex, quite difficult. And then even then, for those that are hardware based, even when you've managed to deploy successfully and you've demonstrated proof of success of your solution, then you need access to potentially large amounts of capital to scale deployment of your solution. But their revenue can still be, fluctuating. And then traditional financiers like banks often don't lend to these types of companies. So I think, if you look at all those points, there's potential for public sector to play a role in many different respects: convening industry, bringing end users to through a lab, funding R&D, providing more innovative financing to test these solutions, or more patient capital, potentially some kind of venture debt type of solutions for companies that are more mature. And there's huge needs along the whole value chain of innovation.
And what about the CLP? So you have some competitive advantage being, a homeland company in Hong Kong.
I think the question you had was regulation and the role it plays or barriers it creates. I mean, I think regulation has two sides. I mean, it definitely has a lot of positives. I mean, in the energy industry, things like health and safety, emissions, environmental impact, those are key kind of factors for us. And you need a level of regulation to ensure that energy is delivered safely in a reliable, sustainable way for people. And I think that's critical. Of course, there's other things as well we've got to add on to that, which is how do we achieve our sustainability targets, how do we become more efficient. But again, if you look at, I would say, all markets, even in sort of Western economies, regulation has played a big role in accelerating certain things. So, for example, electrification of transport or electrification of buses in Europe or London, that was really driven through, low emission zones, clean air policies, and really, it has been like regulation or policy driven to create the environment for solutions to be deployed. So I see it a bit different. I see regulation has a role to play, like Dominic mentioned. They're an important stakeholder because they actually take a much more longer term view on what the impact is, and they're supposed to take into account the benefits of all stakeholders. So I think regulation, when we work with them constructively, you actually create the right environment for innovation, and you actually create the pace or timeline to deploy these things. So that's why we work very closely with small companies who are looking at even things like grid automation, smart grid applications, because we realize a smarter asset means we spend less on it, which obviously helps the ultimate customer. So we're happy to deploy these solutions, and that's part of our kind of commitment, to the regulation, also to our customers and shareholders. So my view is that regulators have this positive role that they can play in encouraging innovation and new solutions.
I totally agree with that. We have seen that, for instance, the difference in cultures and regulation in markets, an advantage when you have to do a scouting of new solutions, because it means that there are many different solutions moving from many different places. So it is not only that you focus on one market and look for the solutions to that market in that market, but you can see what it's been done already in other markets where the regulation has been more favorable to the development of new solutions, for instance. Of course, regulation plays a major role, and there are a lot of things that regulators can do. For instance, in Brazil, there is a policy in which electric utilities that are all regulated need to spend about 1% of the net operating revenue in R&D. So this means that we are kind of committed and applied to do R&D in Brazil, and this means dozens of projects we have with universities, research centers, the startups, not only regarding academic research, but also doing real innovation in our living labs. We have opened a living lab last year that we call Urban Futurability, that is in Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo is the only megapolis we have in our group, to be honest. And we have set a project in an area of about 100,000 customers, in which we are testing about 40 digitalization and artificial intelligence-based solutions, and in which we are opening all the data we are gathering to other players so that they can develop and provide services regarding smart cities, mobility for citizens or the city itself. So we have been able to do all these because the regulation environment has been also supportive and encouraging us to be able to set up these kinds of initiatives. So I totally agree that regulation must be also a plus in some cases if it is well understood and well taken advantage of. Regarding working with small startups, something we have learned and startups appreciate when we do this work with them is that we can lead them to comply with regulation. So it is not only that we take advantage of the solution they have, but when they come to work with us regarding, for instance, health and safety that is relevant for us, it is not that we cannot omit all that we have to comply with. So we teach them and they appreciate it, because then when they go to other major company and to try to get them as a customer, they already comply with local regulation, and it's much easier for them to continue working with big corporations. So it's a totally collaborative approach and how to take advantage.
I see. Yeah, I totally agree all of your comments. I think in such a regulated industry, it is very important to collectively work with platforms, regardless it's an investment platform or it's industry platform or intercompany innovation hubs and so on, so that we all save time and also we all prepare ourselves ahead of the regulation does. So that is really something that the startups has to learn and be aware and take action to actively involve with. This is also the value for SET here as well. And my second question is, since you guys are very experienced already in this ecosystem, so I would like to throw this question first to Dominic. As you're mentioning that you are on the investment side, could you share some of one of the good or the success example from your own investment onto a startup company, or turning them successfully into a business from a lab science?
Sure. So yeah, I can give you an example, maybe an example for Nepal. So in South Asia, so Asia as a whole manufactures about 80% of the bricks in the globally. And China actually is about 67% of bricks that are manufactured. China actually has been adopting more and more technologies to make the brick manufacturing industry cleaner. Actually, traditional way of making bricks, you have to deforest, burn using kilns. I don't know if you know what I mean by kiln, but you have to burn these bricks in a high heat, and it creates a lot of pollutants and carbon emissions. And with urban development and population growth in South Asia in particular, the demand for bricks is going to grow very large, and it's one of the biggest contributors to CO2. So what we did to begin with was we started aggregating demand of the construction industry in Nepal, because it also needed a push from the regulators, because the Nepal government recognized that they had to really start putting more pressure on manufacturers to manufacture cleaner. So there was also a regulatory push. So we aggregated the demand of these construction companies and said, okay, what's the pain point? What's the pricing you're willing to pay to purchase cleaner bricks? And then we started sourcing through global networks on solutions that could potentially solve this problem. And there was one solution that came from Korea. And it's not like a very advanced technology. It's technology that had been around for a while that maybe been applied in other industries, but an earth science, new materials technology that could help manufacture bricks in a cleaner way without having to burn in the kilns. And they were as solid, as robust, as strong as normal bricks, and the pricing point was decent. So we then started testing their solution on some of our construction property development partners in Nepal, and we're now undergoing a market pilot. So we provide, usually for a first mover to come in and test, you need to find the clients that are willing to work with you. That's not easy for a startup coming in. Finding the local partner, and then we also provided some upfront capital in the form of a grant to test the solution. But then that grant then can get converted into an investment right if the market pilot is successful, and they go on to need to raise more funding to scale that solution. So that's one example. I'm just trying to illustrate the example that it's not just about funding, but aggregating the demand of a major pain point in Asia, working in countries where there's starting to be a more favorable regulatory environment, working with the industry that's going to pay for and adopt the solution, and then facilitating the entrepreneur journey through funding at the right point. Yeah.
Got it. Fernando, could you also share some of the success case you have seen in the European side?
Well, yeah. We have, as I said before, we have worked with more than 300 startups in the last 4 years. Yeah. We are not investors. We're not accelerators. We have what is called now a venture client approach. So we try to build business with the startup, and we want to be a platform for the startup so they are able to grow with us. And usually we start with POCs or pilots, but then the ultimate goal is to have the startup becoming a supplier of the group. And in these 3 years, 4 years, we have seen examples such as Notsami Networks, that is an Italian startup that when it started working with us, well, not a startup anymore, it's already a 253 million euros company, I think. When they started working with us, it was a small group, and by working with us, it has been able to grow and to scale up with us. Now we are applying their technology that is basically a cybersecurity solution for critical assets in different parts of the world, and they've been able to open markets as well, thanks to the work they have done with us. More recently, we have worked with Enel, that is a German company, and we've been using their technology to find the optimal point for connection of new renewable developments into the distribution grid in Brazil. So this is an example of how we've been able to bring European technology to Brazil to do testing. But then we have also the other way around. I mean, it is not only that we are bringing innovation from developed countries to other regions, but also we are taking advantage of the developments we've been able to do in Latin America to export them to other countries. So, for instance, our colleague of the Renewable Energy Division have been able to develop what we think is the most optimized way to use water for the cleaning of solar panels with a method they have developed in the Atacama Desert in Chile, where water is a more scarce, completely scarce resource. So we've been able to develop new technologies in Chile that then have been also being used by other countries of the group. Or, for instance, also in Chile, we have developed with a local startup virtual visits so that suppliers don't need to visit sites when preparing tenders. So we are reducing time, we're reducing costs, and this solution that was implemented 1 or 2 years ago has been mostly important this year that we've been all under lockdown. So we have been able to continue doing these visits with the suppliers to the sites using this technology, and this technology is being used, for instance, now in Spain as well. So it is not only that we've been able to bring technology to Latin America, but also we've been able to develop technologies in Latin America or solutions taking advantage of the local needs and of the local resources, and then export them to other countries of the world.
Cool. And Siraj, so in your CLP group, Have you had any, have you helped or see some of the success case within your ecosystem?
Yeah, we have. So we have two main programs that we run annually. One of them is called Free Electrons, and it's a group of 10 utilities globally who came together to basically scout and scan for energy startups globally, and then take the shortlisted companies through a sort of 3 modules with these utilities. And the idea is that the startups have direct access to the utilities, and the utilities are there to do pilot projects. So we run proof of concepts. If they're successful, they kind of get rolled out. We also have another program which we run with a partner in China, which is really dedicated for CLP, looking at China-based tech companies, and that's more bespoke to us, where we scout and scan companies for our problem sets and then roll out pilots again. One interesting example we had from the Free Electrons program was a kind of assisted living application, which came out of the UK. So it was a UK-based startup company who got accepted in the program. We trialed their solution, which essentially used energy metering information to understand elderly relatives' kind of behavior and patterns and presence, and use that to essentially have peace of mind to the younger people who might not be at home. So we actually deployed that in Hong Kong on a pilot basis. It needed some localization of technology, so the tech transfer is not always straightforward from Europe or US into Hong Kong or China. So there's always some translation we need to do to make it work here. So we kind of localized it, so to speak, trialed it with a few customers, and actually it was quite popular. So we've actually gone and rolled that out. But that was a good example where we weren't necessarily looking for a assisted living product to help our customer base, but through this program we actually came across this company, and it's and then it made sense for us that we've actually got elderly people in Hong Kong who and this product kind of makes sense for them, and then it needs a bit of adjustment to make it work here. So that was I would say that was just one example of what I thought was interesting, because it was a little bit not exactly what we're looking for, but something we came across and deployed.
I see. Yeah, thank you for the sharing. I actually have some success case I would like to share with you too, and that is between our collaboration with SET. So because we are located in China, the industry are very segmented across different cities. It is very important for you to, or for the startups, or even for the ecosystem to understand where is the place and what do they care for. So for instance, we identify the pilot is we identify one city which is heavily involved in battery. So they have the largest battery company in the city, and then we develop along with this industry line. So we attract and help specific SET, the German the Dinas company, to see what they can do in a battery field. So that's what we do. And I think it's really important to be specific and also to be targeted ahead of time. Yeah. And you guys are more than welcome if you have relevance on that point relating to China. Just feel free to let me know. Also, because time is just flying, before we ending the section, I would like to say that, everyone wants to see the success story, but most of time the failures, the reason why somebody failed is a great lesson. So for ending the section, could you please give 1 or 2 sentences of what do not do tips to the startups for them to go better in the near future? Fernando, I think you're ready to go.
Wow, this is a tough question. So, what to recommend? I think startups know very well what they have to do. I would say that what we have learned in these years is that we have been able to identify startups no matter where they are originated from, and we are willing to work with all of them. But then it is not that we are looking for the best startups. It's that we are looking for the best startups targeting the needs we have and the use cases we have identified. So I think that it's a must for the startup. The startup has to be able to identify those use cases that are relevant for the industry, test those use cases, and build upon them to develop others. It is not that that we look for drones. No, we look for drones that are able to do inspection of distribution grids. So it's a very specific use case. So it is not only the technology, but also the use case related to it. And I think that is something that a startup has always that needs to have always in mind.
Thank you, Siraj.
Yeah, I'll build on that. I think that's a great point. I mean, from my example, for if I look at the companies we've worked with which didn't progress beyond the pilot stage, let's say, I think it's because they probably didn't fully understand our needs and use case, and thus didn't apply their solution or technology in that manner. So I think if I was giving any advice, but like Fernando said, Dominic, the startups know what they're doing, so it's not for us really to say much. But what I would say is just really understand your customers' problems and then explain to the customer as easily as possible how you're solving it, because sometimes we don't understand actually, and that's also part of the challenge. So really be laser focused on what is your customer's issue, and then in plain English, hopefully just 1 or 2 sentences, explain why you're going to solve that. I mean, that's what
I totally agree with Saraansh. When you go to an event at a set week, that there are many startups around. Sometimes you read the abstract and you don't get it. I mean, the abstract has to be very clear, and you have to stand out, just with a brief paragraph on what you're able to do for the big corporation. So those are the tips, that a startup must take into account.
Got it. And do we have Dominic here?
Yes, I'm still here. Sorry, am I? Oh, sorry. For some reason, can you see
no
me?
worries. Your video. No, your video is off, but your audio works well.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, sorry, I'm still here. I didn't know I was off. Yeah, no, I completely agree with what Fernando and Saraansh has already said. I guess just that, because we have a program, we do the investment, but to feed the investment, we have a program called ADB Ventures Labs, where we look to aggregate the industry demand and then source startup solutions to solve those very specific pain points. And so we often let the industry themselves really validate, whether the startups have what it takes to come in these markets. But we think, the startups that tend to do well are more convincing. First of all, they already have, they speak in very common language and solving a very specific pain point. But also critically, they have to have a sense of the path they will follow. It's not just about solving the pain point of one corporate, but what is it the pain point of the industry? Can there be a large enough market for them to tackle in the region? And so especially if you're starting in a market like Myanmar, they're not huge industries in it. They're not huge markets in itself. If you're really tackling the pain point in these markets, you have to make sure that the pain point is huge, big, and that's the basis for starting off. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'm just going to wrapping up at the points that you guys have mentioned, and also great tips for the startups as well as the players in the ecosystem, which are, firstly, be clear and be specific, to be able to articulate what you do and what value you could contribute and what you are looking for. So I think that's like the number one for nearly everybody in the startup ecosystem. And the number two is, considering this is a highly regulated industry, do your homework, finding the platform who can coach you, help you to be compliant in your own industry or in your own market. That's also some homework the startup must do before they go to the market. And the third thing is relating to investment. So all startups will need investment sooner or later. Finding the patient ones, or finding the ones who are not only give you the money, but also give you the lessons as well. And the last, but not the least, finding the experts like all our panelists here today. So thank you very much for your time. And I hope that we could remain in contact as well as exchange more relevant information down the road with a set week together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.